I interviewed a whole bunch of people who have been in actual firefights, life and death situations. And my question was, what can you pass along to your students based on your experiences? And almost all of them said, not a damn thing. Those experiences are mine. The specifics of those instances belong to me. We see evidence of it a lot. Simple arguments escalating to somebody dead because they drew their gun too quickly. A lot of people believe that if I'm going to pull out my gun, I'm going to use my gun. If I pull out my knife, I'm going to use my knife. I'm more inclined to say, if I pull out my gun, I should be prepared to use it. If I pull out my knife, I should be prepared to use it, but I'm not obligated to. You can produce a blade as a deterrent to the further escalation of violence, while simultaneously being true, if you flip out a knife, that could actually escalate violence.
Welcome to the Superhuman Blueprint Podcast.
Welcome, my friends, to the Superhuman Blueprint Podcast. As always, I am your host, Drew Crursell from Primal Wellness Coaching. Today, we have a very special episode because we have a very special person on today's episode. We've got Paulo G.N. Rubio, who, although he won't claim the title of subject matter expert by many of us, he is considered to be the prominent, unbiased perspective on martial arts. So Paulo is a longtime martial artist himself with foundations in Filipino martial arts, but he's also spent many years traveling the world studying from the perspectives of many, or you might even say most martial arts, as well as studying combat tactics of various militaries, law enforcement departments, private security teams. He has a vast arsenal of knowledge when it comes to the martial arts, self-defense, and violence. Paulo runs Funker Tactical, where via various online mediums, he imparts his own learnings, knowledge, and guidance to his millions of followers. He's also currently on a world tour, bringing curated bits of his vast knowledge to those of us that are fortunate enough to be able to attend one of his seminars. Actually, I was going to dedicate this episode to grooming, because you always have an excellently sculpted beard, despite the fact that you're rolling around on the ground and jumping around and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know how you do it. If I get any longer than this, I just look like a crazy homeless person. So, all right. Paulo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, amigo. Appreciate it.
So, before we get into all the good stuff, just quick assessment from you. So I had the fortune to attend your seminar last weekend. And so just some feedback on a scale of 9 to 10, how impressed were you with my performance?
Scale of 9 to 10. I'd say 9.7.
That's perfect. And I round up. So you heard that, folks. I'm a 10 out of 10.
Almost perfect. I mean, yeah, own it. 10 out of 10 that. No, you did great,
I'm taking
man.
it.
You did great. Open-minded, willing to work. I really love the community and the environment of Gateway City's Krav Maga,
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with its leadership, to include, yourself and obviously Mr. Noy, and just sort of cultivating that open-mindedness with a willingness to work, Like, not everything that I showed must have been like, wow, immediately, that was awesome. But you guys put it through its paces. And that's what I appreciate. It's all I can really ask for as an instructor, man.
Yeah, something that's been interesting being a part of that school, because I've trained at a number of different schools, both in Krav Maga and in other styles. This is the only school I've ever taught at, but the curriculum is always evolving. And for me, because the studio is far from where I live and I don't get into train that much, so it makes it hard for me as an instructor to keep up with how the things that we teach evolve. So in that regard, it's kind of difficult for me, purely selfishly. However, I love that it's dynamic. And
yes,
Noy opened the school 7 years ago and asked me to start teaching for him shortly thereafter. So I've been teaching for a while, and he was still training in Krav Maga while he opened the studio. So he was still doing that training. but then he started studying all these other things, right? He started, just reading books and listening to podcasts and watching videos. He does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, but for a length of time, he was, purely an academic student of martial
Right.
arts and violence. And he was making adjustments and really teaching himself grappling, which was amazing. I mean, he already had a foundation, but just
He
through his
wrestled,
own,
right? He wrestled in high school.
he wrestled in
So
high school.
yeah.
But that was it, right? Other than whatever, little bit of grappling that we picked up at the Krav Maga school, we both used to train out together. But he's a phenomenal grappler, and a large portion of that is self-taught. Anyway, he builds these things into the curriculum, so things are always changing. And yeah, to your point, the school is good because of our leadership being open-minded enough to say, okay, this is how we do it today, but if we find a better way to do it tomorrow, then we're going to look into that and we're going to pursue that.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you, so you kind of half jokingly, maybe not, several times during the seminar when you're with us, said that that school is the good kind of Krav.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I know what that means, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, man, when people, okay, first of all, sometimes I'm in a vacuum, right? So whenever somebody tells me they do Krav, I'm like, okay, it's going to be one or the other. It's going to be the really crappy kind of Krav Maga, the one where the instructor took a weekend course or transformed his karate into Krav Maga because it sells better.
Yeah.
And it's watered down. And it's there, there's no real exchange of energy. They have an anti-grappling program that makes grappling seem like it's this super easy thing to do, and it's very shortcutty. And that's because they know full well. Okay, we're talking about the crap Krav Maga now. They know full well that the large majority of people looking for martial arts or self-defense solutions are really uneducated or undereducated. Like they don't know what is good, right?
Average
they don't
consumer,
have a
right,
framework.
is not inherently educated in what it is that they're coming to be educated in.
Absolutely. And so when you're an adult looking for some kind of a self-defense or a martial arts solution, sometimes that can be for fitness reasons, health, maybe you're just lonely and you want to make new friends. But sometimes it is fear-based, right? It is because something has happened. You read something happened to a friend, something happened to you that you don't want to happen again or to happen to you. And so there is this fear-based intention.
Yeah.
And so you're looking for solutions for that. And just like a normal consumer might, when you have a problem and you're looking to buy a solution for it, you want to know that that solution is going to work, that it's the right fit.
Yeah.
And that just really doesn't exist in martial arts. But what the supply and demand thing does is that because people have this demand for certainty and guarantees and assurances, there will be no shortage of people who will say, yeah, this will definitely work. This is exactly what you're looking for, right? And so that's how bad Krav is perpetuated. It's by a bunch of people selling guarantees,
this is the
and
solution.
certainties and easy solutions, right? That's bad Krav. And it's easy to manufacture false metrics for evolution, progress, and success by making things like really super easy and giving you a false sense of confidence. Cool, you can kick this, you can kick these mitts. You can, it makes a cool sound when you impact the kick shield. Hooray! You can defend yourself.
Yeah,
that's bad Krav, right?
Okay.
And if I were to simply characterize what good Krav is, and I was actually talking about this in another Krav podcast. I don't know. Krav people seem to like me. Filipino martial arts schools don't like me very much for some reason, even though I love Filipino martial arts.
You're way too outside the box for a traditional martial art.
I know, but I love it, man. I still love the art. I still love tradition. I love the classical approach. I'm just not a slave to it. But I was speaking with, Coach Ron Engelman, who's also a Krav Maga dude, and he asked me the same question. And I boil it down to three things, There's got to be some kind of sparring, some kind of pressure testing, and a demonstrable open-mindedness within the culture of that school, right?
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
it. That's what makes good Krav, and I see those things in what you guys do.
Okay.
Of course, we can partition and really break down what is pressure testing or what constitutes sparring. There's different kinds:
Hmm.
technical, light, hard, all weapons free, compartmentalized, all those things. But if they exist in some capacity or another in an honest way, that's good
Yeah.
Krav.
Yeah.
That's good Krav.
Okay. And something funny is, so I have two Krav Maga coaches. One is Mr. Noy, and the other one is Ron Engelman.
Oh, really? Okay, you're the
Yeah.
guy,
So
because he said
I,
that I trained one of his students in
yeah.
LA, and I'm like, which one? He's like, tall guy, white guy, beard, sleeve tattoo, and I'm like,
Oh, come on, he knows. Come on,
I'm
Ron.
like,
Come on,
no,
Ron.
no, no, because I didn't know name. Like, I met so
Okay.
many people, right? I don't know names,
Gotcha.
so I'm like, tell me what he looks like.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
said those things,
Gotcha.
I'm like, okay, well, that narrowed it down to at least two or three. So
Yeah.
you're the guy.
I'm the guy. Yeah. So I attended one of his courses in Israel, and we'll be doing so again once I can get enough time off with my wife to get back out there.
We all need time off from our wives. I'm not trying to
I mean,
get you in
when
trouble.
she
You don't have
approves
to
my
agree to
time
that.
off request, when
But yeah,
she
so what
approves
do
my
you think about
request,
those three things? What do you think about my three criteria for good Krav? Does that make sense? Am I missing anything? What
it
do you
does
think?
make sense, and it is very and I can see why. Tying back to your comment about the Filipino martial arts guys, why it conflicts with, we'll just say, traditional martial arts,
Yeah.
because a lot of martial arts, karate, kung fu, kali, any of these things, taekwondo, they are very much tied in tradition. This is the way it was taught to us, and this is the way we are going to teach it. These are the sets of moves or techniques that we teach. This is how we do them, and this is,
Right.
if you're not doing it this way, then it is not correct. And in a way, for the sake of preserving lineage and preserving an art form, I can agree with that. If you're learning
All
a
good.
martial art as an art, then all good.
Right.
But if you're learning it as a practical skill, then it has to be fluid. So
Yeah.
one of the most simple hacks to improve your overall quality of life, including things like energy, immunity, mood, and more, is to get better sleep. And I am going to help you sleep better, completely free. The thing is, sleep is easy to ignore. Life gets busy and sleep loses priority. There's a problem, though. Where many of you want to sleep better, you can't seem to. The thing is, so many things have become a part of a normal lifestyle in our society, which are secretly sabotaging many aspects of our wellness, including sleep. That is why I created the Hack Your Sleep program. In this program, I am going to give you a number of low to no cost, simple to implement hacks you can start doing right now to fix your sleep. By using these tips and hacks, you will fall asleep easier, stay asleep longer, and most importantly, sleep deeper, allowing your body to cycle through the many stages of sleep multiple times throughout the night. That is how recovery happens. That is how you wake up feeling rested, energized, and ready to unleash your best self. And because you're a Superhuman Blueprint podcast listener, I am going to give you access to this course completely free. Go to hackyoursleep.net and use code SUPERHUMAN at checkout. That is hackyoursleep.net. Superhuman at checkout. This will get you 100% off and on the path to getting better sleep than you've had since you were a kid.
And I think a lot of Filipino martial arts, they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to claim purity and authenticity, but at the same time claim relevance in modern day application. Like you can have both, but you got to be honest with it, right? You have to partition which is which, because this art was born a long time ago in the jungles of the Philippines. And if you claim that it's valid for self-defense in modern times in an urban jungle in Western society, there needs to be modification or re-examination of those things. So
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of, at least Filipino martial arts, I think, look, a lot of people will still fall for it, but I think an educated consumer, let's say, will know. Like, you can't claim to be both simultaneously and completely.
Yeah.
And I think
Well,
that's where it goes
and we
wrong.
may be led astray by Hollywood a bit, right? You go and watch the old the karate and ninja and kung fu movies, and it's like they're doing these very beautiful controlled movements and and techniques,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they get jumped by 6 people and they're just kicking everyone's ass.
Right.
So
And there's an element of edged weapons work, of weapons-based martial arts that they lean on, and it has to do with ego. And this is what prevents them from actually pressure testing and even sparring, is because when I tell you this technique will beat that technique, and I present that to you with certainty, if we begin the process of actually testing that out, that theory out, you'll find that there is no repeatable outcome across the board from everybody,
yeah.
right? And so you hear things like, oh, it's too deadly to spar, or we don't spar because that's not realistic. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, man, sparring isn't meant to recreate how it actually goes down in real life, but it's
Yeah.
a great tool, right? A great training tool to really develop and quality control and pressure test specific elements that are present out there. Like, do we need good timing out there? I think
Yeah.
so. Does footwork matter there, right? Does our understanding of range and proximity and angles matter? For sure.
Yeah.
But a lot of them won't do that because it really confronts what they've initially sold it as, and
Yeah.
it's being sold as this 100%. This is going to work. Trust me, it worked for my grandmaster, bro. Are you calling me a liar? Are you
Yeah.
telling me that I get this a lot whenever when I challenge a concept? You calling me a liar? Are you calling my grandmaster a liar because this saved his life? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not calling you a liar. We can both be right.
Questioning everything they hold true. How dare you?
How
Actually, we've done some we do some drills with knife work in particular in the studio I train in now with Mr. Noy, as well as the studio I trained in before, using shock knives, which is always just a nice metric of, okay, well, not does it work, but what variables are there, and how does that impact whether or not you're actually going to get poked or sliced with this thing. And it's a nice eye opener, right? Because we don't teach that this technique is going to resolve this, right? If someone is doing an overhand stab with a knife and we do our 360 block and counter, that's great. But how close is our arm to our head, and how long is that knife? Did we make that contact at just the right point on our arm versus their arm? Did we get too close to the knife? And being able to pick these things apart and say, okay, well, the technique is sound, but it's going to go any direction depending on all of these variables, right? So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, maybe it works really well, maybe it works okay. Sometimes we do the thing, we put the lipstick on the blade of the training knife so we can kind of see all the places we get poked and sliced. And we get challenged, right? And rightfully so. And I love that we have a student body that will challenge us, right? Well, what about this? What about this? Well, I don't think that will work. And we have discussions, and the answer is the answer is whatever works, right?
Right.
Maybe this works, maybe it
think
doesn't, but it's something.
I think that people are also too quick to have a final destination as far as assessing what works and what doesn't work. I like to think that it worked then, doesn't mean it's going to work again. And even if we have repeated pressure testing sessions, how often does something need to work before we keep it? How often does something need to fail before we discard it? Does it matter who was conducting the test, under what parameters those tests were being conducted? So I always like to use just logic as the number one filter, right?
Logic?
Like, I know,
you gotta
right?
use emotion, just emotion.
It's weird. Like that 360 defense from Krav Maga, right? I have some doubts about it. Like, will I really want to open up in close proximity as that technique requires.
Yep.
I don't know, but if I examine that defense logically, I'm like, there's a bisecting line with a simultaneous brachial stun, followed by a rapid acquisition of the weapon-bearing limb. That makes logical sense to me. If I can
Okay.
pull it off, I feel this way about every technique. I'm not just saying this about the Krav
Sure.
Maga 360 defense. I
Yeah.
I taught a bisecting line, cross arm, going to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I have doubts about that, right?
Yeah.
If there's a rapid retraction, that shit's not going to work. You know what I mean? If I don't identify with certainty that that is the attack that's coming, that's a dangerous technique to learn. But logically speaking, I'm seeking to get to the outside line. I'm providing a barrier from an incoming low line attack, and I'm following through with something else. So logically, I can go, okay, that's at least worth examining, right?
Yep.
Because I don't know, man. I like the inside hack solutions. I like the immediacy of getting to the outside line. I like transitioning from inside to outside line, and it's just we got to flow through it, man, because we don't know.
Well, one thing that you were doing as the leader of this seminar is you were kind of making that disclaimer, right? Like none of this stuff works all the time. You know, you
Yeah.
as the leader of this curriculum that you're teaching us there, you know, you've got your reps in, but it doesn't work all the time for you. And you demonstrated that, right? You'd have
Yeah.
Noy or some other student come up there and you'd kind of go through the motions and you'd be like, all right, that time it worked. All right, that time I got cut. All right, that time I got cut. All right, now it worked. All right, that was really good.
Right. And I have to be honest with that because I don't travel with my number one uke. You know what I mean? I'm not there to put on a show and to sell you on the validity of the technique. I'm kind of selling you on this process, this critical thinking, analytical discovery.
It's more conceptual,
process.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The concepts of self-defense is severely lacking in a lot of self-defense instruction.
Yeah. And even, when I was in Germany, my number one training partner there that I identified was this Ukrainian guy with a huge wrestling pedigree, and he was a martial artist. He trained Muay Thai and kickboxing and sambo, and he just looked like one of these. I mean, he's Ukrainian, but he just looked like one of these Eastern European guys that have just been fighting all his life. He got the short beard and you just know cauliflower ears.
Yeah, no neck probably.
Yeah, man, just an awesome dude. His name is Oleg, by the way. Shout out to Krav Maga Street Defense in Germany. I'm telling you, Krav Maga guys love me, man. But anyway, I demonstrated a technique, right? It was something to do with a 50-50 resolution using a duck under. And I'm like, look, you want to know how this fails? I'm like, Oleg, don't let me do this to you. And he didn't let me do it to him. And then we discussed what are the points of failure of this particular solution. And I think that's infinitely more important because I can't teach you how to do that one thing properly and reliably and with certainty in one seminar.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, that's all I'm teaching you. So if I just show you hey, look, there are points of failure to this. Here's a process for you to examine where your points of failure to this are, then you can really honestly examine that option that I've given you and make a more educated decision as to, is this something I keep? Is this something that I shelf, or just this is totally not for me?
Right. Yep. Yeah. And you did preface that. And I recall we had a student ask as you were demonstrating a particular technique, she's a small woman. She said, would this work for someone, that's much bigger and stronger than you? And you just said, no, it won't.
Yeah. Straight up. Straight up. I mean, I can go, well, if you do this and if you break this posture and I'm just let's just keep this short. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Go look for another answer.
Right.
Work on this for now, but discover it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, I was tagged in that post and I shared it on my feed. Right. And because dude, it's too much work to lie and bullshit people in this industry. It's just way too much work to upkeep some sort of a facade of, of how you want people to perceive you. I'm just
Right.
too lazy to do that, man. It's too much work, bro. Give me my Cheetos. Yesterday I was out in my patio smoking a cigar and drinking a grape slushy. I'll do
That's a
that.
really weird combination.
Well, it could have
Slush.
been wine, right? It's
Yeah,
just
usually
more
it's like a nice liquor or I don't know, maybe a coffee or something.
like a
But grape slushy.
brandy or
Yeah, brandy. There you
yeah.
go.
But
I'm
no,
not I'm
grape
not much
slush
of a
works just as
drinker.
fine. You just need something sweet on your lips as you puff on
Nice.
that cigar. Anyway.
Um, so as
Uh,
I understand it, you don't you kind of your focal point is bladed weapon, but
yeah.
your scope of study of going out and just learning is kind of everything, right? Everything
Yes.
martial arts.
Yes.
So is the focus on the bladed weapon really just tied to your roots in the Filipino martial arts,
Yeah.
or why is that something that you think is kind of important to
Hmm.
spend time on, or why do you have passion around spending time on that?
I started as a content creator in the tactical world, and I got to travel the world with regular and special forces units all around the world, law enforcement and military.
Okay.
Just making videos, right?
Yeah.
But there were so many moments in between where, like I slept in police barracks in the south of France, eating bread and milk for breakfast and waking up early and going to the range. And I had all of these amazing discussions and training opportunities in between sessions. It was a lot of knowledge, right? A lot of information. I could hold a conversation with anybody about anything related to fighting. And then sort of the tactical community I felt was very closed-minded, right?
Okay.
Like a person like me who was being inquisitive and curious couldn't ask, U.S. Army Ranger, or I couldn't doubt a U.S. Army Ranger on how to pull that trigger,
Yeah.
right? It was very much an appeal to authority based on my experience kind of industry. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to explore martial arts because this must be more open-minded. And I
Yeah.
was like, and then when I got into it, I'm like, holy, it's just as close-minded,
Yeah.
but it's bigger. So a
Yeah.
person like me can express their opinion. So, and I've always loved martial arts, man, ever since I was a kid. I've always
Mhm.
dabbled, Hoist Gracie is my hero. Love Lyoto
Nice.
Machida. So then I started Aperture Fight Focus and really became this, journalist, if you will, in martial arts. I really wanted to
Okay.
find out what made martial artists tick, what their pitfalls are, what their tendencies were. And through that, I, got to train with, Olympic level judokas and
Yeah.
world champion jiu-jitsu dudes and boxing coaches were world champions, combatives dudes. And it was just like, whoa, like this flood of information.
Yeah.
And just like my own personal journey in martial arts, I began to look for commonalities. And then I found Filipino martial arts through that process. And
Oh, really?
I was like,
So that's not tied to your roots as a Filipino person.
no, it's not something that I've been doing for very long, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I started in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got
but
it.
that's a specific journey as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, I found Filipino martial arts, and I found it to be a good chassis, right, to overlay these commonalities that I'm finding. And so
Okay.
because it's connected to my culture, um, and because just I love the duality of it, where I can be expressive artistically, and find challenges in forms and katas, so to speak, and
Mhm.
nuances, but at the same time, there's an element of it that is just like very raw and simple, and let's deal with this. And so that's how I fell into it. Like I was in the Philippines, filming for Jared Wihongi's Asia conference. It's all Filipino martial arts, and the
Okay.
last days are reserved for like full contact stick fighting. And I was like, I'm making
Wow.
all these videos. I'm like, fuck it, I'm jumping right in. Put me in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How deep into your training were you at that point?
I was still in the collection of information and wisdom without any practical application or training. So it was all
Okay.
just here, right? I called
So you went
myself
for
this hypothetical.
for full contact based
Yeah.
with your only your knowledge of sight without actual reps
Yep,
or
exactly.
learning without reps. Got it.
Absolutely. And then, I was put up against like a world champion from Indonesia,
Okay.
and he kicked my ass, like pretty good. Stick fighting, we just wear a fencing mask and hockey gloves. That's it,
Okay.
right? And we're
Yeah.
swinging with rattan stick. But you know what, dude? It was sunset. I was in the Philippines. A breeze was blowing. I was in front of the beach, surrounded by peers, and I was fighting this guy, and I was like, "Whoa!" I'll never be a prize fighter like in Muay Thai or boxing, but
Yeah.
I felt like this, jungle warrior, gladiator, Viking, and I'm like that primalness of it.
Yeah.
I felt like Filipino martial arts was at that point in my life was the only way that I could really get there. Outside of really putting myself in danger and getting into street beefs type,
Yeah.
fights and smokers. I didn't want that. This
Yeah.
this was accessible. It hurt, right? But because of the nature of, stick work, it's not so much like getting hit with a baseball bat. It's almost like getting bullwhipped, like
Yeah.
like it
Like
stings, it sucks. I've
yeah.
broken bones, but the scars look cool. And also, I friggin' hit this guy a bunch of times. I hit him in the head, man.
Yeah,
I
you
hit him in
got
the
your hits in.
body. I hit him in the arm. And I was like, there's something to this, right?
Yeah.
Here I am, a complete noob. And even though I was outclassed cumulatively, I had my moments where I smacked this dude pretty good. And I heard the crowd go, oh. So I was like, yeah,
You know what?
stick
You know what
fighting.
I relate that to? This is totally ridiculous, but
Mm.
I relate that to as a kid. I was a big Mortal Kombat fan. And once in a while, my
Who did
sister
you
would
use?
agree. Who? I was a Kano. I was a
Okay.
Kano guy.
Right. Okay.
Once in a while, my sister would agree to play with me, and she was the one that just mashed all the buttons. And sometimes she would kick my ass, and it was so annoying.
Right. It was exactly that. It was exactly that. So I was like, there's something to this, These sticks are moving really, really fast. There's
Yeah.
something primal and inherent. It's in our DNA. I think stick fighting is more primal than empty hand fist fighting.
Really?
Um, yes, I do, because we evolved because we learned how to utilize tools to our
Okay.
advantage.
Yeah.
And bashing human with stick, right? I think that came a close second to bashing human with fist.
Yeah.
But there's something really, really primal about bashing human with stick, and
Okay.
I love it. I love it
Yeah.
so much. Yeah. So that's what really drew me into this, and then the whole um, edge weapons thing
Yeah.
became a particular puzzle for me. Um, and then, yeah, I think just my natural curiosity and my ability to develop processes for skill development, I found a demand for process and method,
Hmm.
and especially within Filipino martial arts, where so many people have a bad taste in their mouth, right? Like
Yeah.
you know about how it goes. Um, by the way, so many modern knife combative systems right now, really good ones, are based on the instructor's experiences with Filipino martial arts. And
Okay.
what they often become are a distillation or a concentration of this huge source material, and they boil it down to the things that work. And
Yeah.
then they present that as XYZ knife combative system. For me, I feel like I'm not going to betray the source material. I'm just
Hmm.
going to give people the tools to be able to navigate through it so that they can come up with their own
Yeah.
concentration and distillation of it.
It's so the Krav Maga school so my first Krav Maga school was Ron Engelman's school in Australia. So that was where I started Krav. And my second school was here in Southern California in Huntington Beach. and where this is the school Noy used to train at. Noy and I go back way beyond that, but when I moved back here, I joined him at that school, and they had kind of fundamental Kali in the curriculum. And I was talking to you about this before the seminar the other day, how, it doesn't get any further than, 2, 4, 6 count, heaven, standard, earth, and then box pattern. Like, as far as like what is written in the curriculum, that's it.
Right.
And I have had the hardest time selling myself on that being useful. Now I know that Noy, as he's brought it into his curriculum, he takes it further in the advanced classes, kind of off paper, right? On paper, it's just those things, but off paper, he does teach the practicality of how to use those things. I don't think in a super advanced way, because that's not his area of training, but he's studied like you studied, right? And he incorporates that into, let's try this and see how it goes. And unfortunately I don't get into train enough these days, again, because it's far, and now I've had a bunch of kids and it's hard for me to go train myself.
I know, right?
But
I feel you. I made some humans too, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got 2 little ones, and man, it's all consuming.
Oh God.
But well, I haven't benefited from what Noy has added to what we've learned there. I know other students have, because I'm kind of the only one that's had a hard time getting on board with, why are we learning this? Everyone else is kind of like, cool, I get it, and this is fun, and I'm going to be good at it.
Yeah.
But also, something that I am a strong advocate of in just about everything, anything that you want to be good at, it doesn't matter what it is, reps, right? You have to get your reps in, whether it's, it's some technique in self-defense or martial arts, whether it is, you want to be good at public speaking, you want to be good at having tough conversations, you want to be good at skateboarding. It doesn't matter, right? If you do it once, you're not going to be good at it, but if you get your reps in, then you can work towards being good at something. Right. And that's also something where I don't have my reps, right? And so that's where I like the idea of being able to attend, like, your seminar. Rob Pagan came and did a Pikiti Tersa seminar. It was a number of years ago at this point, but it was great, right? It added context and gave me, 2 hours of reps, right? That normally, when we incorporate these into a class, we do it for 20 minutes or so, because we got a bunch of other stuff to cover. So that's why your seminar, which was 5-6 hours, was great, right? I got enough reps in during that 5-6 hours to cover what would otherwise come through in a lot of class. I'd have to get a lot of classes in where we touch on that curriculum, that type of curriculum. So I think specialized training like this is great, because it allows you to get your reps in a condensed amount of time. Not that in one seminar I'm now an expert, but at least I have just a little bit more I can pull from, right?
Sure. And for me, I mean, I love the idea of being when you approach something new or something that's specialized, you kind of want to build it from the ground up. But I'm more inclined to believe that what you should be doing, what one ought to be doing, is incorporating past experiences, skills, and competencies into the new thing that you're learning, right?
Yeah.
And so, man, I would love the opportunity to go back and teach Filipino martial arts, strictly Filipino martial arts, but in a particular context, the way I like to teach it. I think you would love it, man.
The question is, do you still get to call it Filipino martial arts if you alter the context?
Yeah, because I'm Filipino.
Okay. Nice. In that case, I take Filipino martial arts too.
I get to claim it. No, but so what I would do is really take these classical drills that belong to systems, and primarily that Pikiti Tertia, but I've stolen drills, with permission, from other systems that I feel fit well congruently with the drills that I've adopted to develop specific skills, right? So I might have a progression where we're doing these 2 drills from Pikiti Tertia to develop skill XYZ, and then we're going to do these next 2 drills from Estacada de Campo or Balintawak to continue developing XYZ skills. And they
Yeah.
all come together. And the cool thing about that is, just like the drills that I use for, knife defense work, each subsequent drill reinforces what you learned from the previous drill. So you're not having to like just completely get mentally drained. So yeah, I would love to teach Filipino martial arts in Los Angeles, because that's also widely considered as like a kind of mecca for
Is it?
Filipino martial art. Yeah, it's a huge
Really?
hub, man. Yeah,
Huh.
New York, and Los Angeles. Just like with so many other things.
Yeah.
So many different Filipino martial arts groups in the Los Angeles area.
All right. Well, on behalf of the county of Los Angeles, I invite you to come and teach your
Thank
take
you
on
very
Filipino
much. I
martial
think I
arts.
will accept that invitation. Let's see how many
Perfect.
Filipino martial artists show up.
Yeah,
No,
right.
it's good. It's good. I love FMA, man. It's so good.
So you mentioned as part of a kind of a good metric of whether you're learning in the right way, like stress testing. So I'm just curious if you could share some examples of the types of stress tests you've seen that you consider to be effective, because there's people are stressed out by different things, right? So you could label anything a stress test, but what do you like of what you've seen?
Okay, so micro scenarios are really, really good because they're efficient.
All right.
They're super, super efficient. We can play out a particular context without actually being in that environment or having to recreate it.
Yeah.
And the thing about micro scenarios is that you can be focused. You can be focused on working particular things. Whereas if you go full blown scenario training, a pitfall that I often see is that it takes on a linear path. I'm walking into a bar, and ain't no way I'm walking out of that bar without getting into a fight. Whereas, you know what I mean? Whereas a good scenario training really requires good role players. Somebody who can deliver cues and receive cues and respond to those cues appropriately. It isn't just like, hey, you bumped into me, man. You get into a fight, right? So that's good. Sparring is a kind of pressure testing, right?
Sure.
All weapons free kind of sparring, which means you can do whatever you want, is good.
Yeah.
But also I prefer like the more focused, compartmentalized sparring. Like a boxing coach may get you to spar using only jabs, right?
Okay. Yeah. That's some of my favorite stuff to do when I lead the stand-up fight classes. Sometimes I put handicaps in a bowl and I make someone pick out the handicap, and that's what they got to work through.
So I talked about the ecological dynamics method, and that's exactly what it is. It's not just compartmentalized sparring, but creating a series of constraints and giving people objectives and outcomes and tasks within that gamified environment to continue the flow of competition and testing, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what you're doing. If you get them to randomly pick, you could only use your cross once you've landed the jab 3 times, or you can only use this specific combination, or get them to do this while you're trying to do this. That is ecological dynamics theory in a nutshell.
Yeah. You never know what handicap you'll find yourself with in a practical situation, right? Sometimes it's like you got to keep your left eye closed, right? That changes things.
Yes. When it comes to something like full contact stick fighting, or even real contact or semi-contact, whatever you want to call it, what I would give my fighters are specific metrics for success.
Okay.
Right? So they're not just trying to win the fight. They're trying to win specific moments using specific things. So I might tell you, like, look, if you can bait high and get a low line cut to the leg, you've won. And I would tell the other person, right, if you can, and I would even gamify this and have a little fun. I'm like, hey, look, if you can bait them for a low line leg cut and then drop a 12 o'clock strike on their head, that's your metric for success. So without both fighters knowing what objectives are, I kind of force them into a specific kind of engagement where one person's baiting with the leg, trying to get a 12 o'clock drop on their head, and the other person is baiting high to cut down to the leg. And so they find themselves in really interesting conditions where they're supremely focused on meeting these metrics for success without just being caveman-y about it.
I really like that. I'm totally stealing that because I do incorporate that into some of our unarmed sparring. However, I don't really gamify it, right? It's like, okay, this is your focus. Try to get some of these in while you're during this round. But if it's like, okay, the round ends when you succeed, or I don't know, even throw in like, okay, if you land this, then your partner's got to do 10 burpees or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Gamify
like
it.
look, a cool one might be, for example, one fighter, their metric for success is to catch a swing kick. And the other person might be to try to land a body kick. And so you'll have a guy kind of baiting an open side to catch the leg kick, and the other guy so they kind of get into this really interesting dynamic for moments in time, depending on what you want them to learn, and you can use these gamification cues to address their specific weaknesses, right? Like if you notice that a fighter really has a terrible high cover under stress and they just kind of go wide, then you go, hey, I need you to cover and then counter. And then the other person will be like, pepper them in the head, So you can work, you can address their deficiencies in a gamified way without putting them in a position where they feel like they just have to win. Yeah, man. Fun stuff.
So how much do you think physical fitness matters from a self-defense perspective?
Oh, it's everything. But it's also, I want to be realistic about it, right? Because on paper, I'm like, it's everything. Cardio, strength, agility. Like that's what ultimately will matter for the most amount of people, for the most amount of times, for the most amount of conditions. If you're physically fit, yes. But I also believe that self-defense ought to be accessible to everybody. There's a fat guy who does self-defense stuff online. And at first I'm like, okay, you're a fat guy, man. Like, what are you doing teaching self-defense? Like, that makes no sense. I had a conversation with him, and then he explained to me reasons or excuses, however way you want to characterize it, about his current condition, right? Yeah. And so, he goes into a self-defense based academy, and then, he's looking for specific kinds of solutions, and then they're going to go, well, do 100 push-ups a day or work towards that and get fit. And his life condition, it doesn't make sense for him to be able to do that. So what else is there? And it's not about shortcuts, right? It's not about, okay, just carry a knife or a Kubaton or whatever, and that's your shortcut. But I feel like it needs to be under some capacity, it needs to be accessible, right? Like I saw a guy today boxing, and he was in a wheelchair. Not that he couldn't walk, but that he was just like really fat. Yeah. So, okay, that guy wants to learn how to throw a punch from a wheelchair. Do I go, hey man, first things first, get your cardio up? Yeah. To some degree, that supply and demand needs to be met in a way that's kind of honest. But to answer your question, 100%. I'll agree to that as I sip my coffee and have a vape. My cardio is terrible. And I also believe, that, you should have at least a good 30 seconds of fight in you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And I'm just, kind of coming up with this on the spot, but I would think if I was going to equate some kind of type of fitness or workout to what would be useful in a practical situation, I would say something like HIIT, right? Because HIIT is all about short bursts of like as high intensity movement as you can muster.
Yeah. And you know what else, man? Here's something. I've sparred and I've taught how to spar people who are just like athletically gifted and had all the cardio in the world. and then you put a fencing mask on them and you get them to do something primal that's uncomfortable, like stick fighting, and they gas right the fuck out really, really fast. It's because they're holding their breath the entire time and they're swinging.
Yep.
Right. So there's a relativity to cardio based on adrenaline and stress also that needs to be managed. So somebody like me who, I might gas out really quick if I'm jogging right next to you.
Yeah.
But under specific contests, I might outlast you just because of my comfort level and my exposure to specific kinds of stressors.
Yeah. It takes me back to, so I used to train Muay Thai and for a number of years. And when I first started sparring, the sparring coach was this little dude from Thailand. And he would kind of just sit on the edge of the boxing ring, kind of only half paying attention. Like we'd, us noobs would get in there and try to Muay Thai spar each other. And he's, not really giving us much tips, but, probably, if not every round, every couple of rounds, he would hop over the ropes. He's got his boxing glove in his hand, and he'd come over and he'd whack me with it and go, "Relax."
Yes.
So I just hear him yelling, "Relax," all the time. Even now, like I'm much better, right? Under the pressure of, okay, I'm in a situation where someone's trying to hit me or kick me or whatever. That is stressful, but I'm like, okay, well, until that moment comes, I go, all right, loosen up the shoulders, don't drop them, but just keep them loose, relax, don't forget to breathe. I hear him yelling relax in my head still, and that was almost 20 years ago.
For me it's breathe. Like when my fighters are fighting, that's mostly what I say, especially if they're new. It's like breathe, and then they step back and you can physically see them draw air. And then maybe they get a little bit more comfortable because it's intense, man. It's fun, but you forget to breathe.
One of the things that I love about grappling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in particular is that, once you're kind of in the role, like maybe not when you're like going for the takedown, but once you're in the role, it's like, all right, you can take your time as long as you're intentional about like what's happening with your limbs and how your opponent or partner is trying to manipulate them. Like you can relax and just kind of like work out the puzzle of what's happening.
I'm so inspired by the jiu-jitsu process, and in particular the dynamics of rolling between two people who are at the same level, at a higher level. Like, man, watching two black belts roll is like art to me, man. It's like, are you guys gonna do anything cool? Like, you guys seem to just be lying there, but they're like reading. You know what I mean? Like they're reading shifts in energy. They're respecting that intention. They're providing a barrier or a counter, and then they're moving on. They're transitioning. And to an outside observer, an uneducated one, it's like, you guys are black belts? You look like you're just kind of like lying there. And I incorporate, and it's very difficult to do that with even a striking art, because the lack of connectivity and the need for, speed is ever present, right? But the cool thing about knife work is that you get both of those worlds, right? You get a detached, disconnected framework where, speed and timing, and it's very hard to go slowly under those dynamics and for people to deem that as being realistic, because that's not how knife attacks go. But the moment you get connected, then you can kind of go into that black belt jiu-jitsu mode and go, okay, I'm trying to do a small circle here. Do you feel my knife starting to raise? And so that's what I love about knife work. We can play it in both of those contexts.
But I get how people got to relax, because knife work in particular, it's just it can be terrifying, right? If you think about the context of if this were a real weapon, like, all right, I just got gutted, all right, I just got stabbed, all right, my throat just got cut, that is a very intimate threat.
That's a tough thing for me. In a previous life, I worked with combat veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Okay.
And believe it or not, I use knife work and stick work as a way to teach, mindfulness under manufactured stress.
Okay.
And
I can see that.
Right?
I wouldn't think of that, but as you say it, I could see that.
Yeah, because, okay, I have a training knife and we're wrestling. but I need you to be mindful and remember that we're friends
Yeah.
and remember the rules of the game. And I can't tell you, man, like I've been smashed. So I do this drill where we're hand fighting and then I produce a knife and then you got to do X,
Mm-hmm.
Y, Z. The moment
Yep.
that knife comes out, all instructions kind of like dissolve. And I'm like, hey, remember I said,
Yeah.
match my energy, bro, match my
Yeah.
energy, match my energy. And it's just like I've been smashed to the ground.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, time. Let's do this again.
Yeah.
So knife work for me is multidimensional, man. Um, it's strange to even hear me say this, but it can be an agent or an agent for healing. I think there's a way to do it. Um, there's a lot of mental puzzles and challenges. It's an art form, and then it's also pretty raw and gruesome,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So it's multidimensional, and
Look,
I'm really happy to teach people who kind of understand that
yep.
and who understand that there is a bridge and that it's just about being honest about what we're doing right now.
Right. Yeah. And there's definitely, this comes back to reps, right? You can you can increase not just your skill, but your comfort zone with reps, right? When
Yeah.
I first started, the first time I knife grappled, I was just grappling, and Noi very sneakily comes over and gives my grappling partner a training knife, and all of a sudden I'm getting poked and sliced, and I didn't even know the knife was there.
Right.
Um, so that rapidly turns into a very high stress, ground sparring situation where it's just like,
Right.
okay, isolate and escape, which wasn't my game plan, right? Going in, it's like, okay, we're grappling. I'm gonna try to submit. Um, yeah, I'm not trying that anymore. I just want to get the hell out of there. And I see
Right.
that with my private clients as well. I don't do it so much these days, but I used to do a lot of private training in self-defense. And
Hmm.
the moment I would introduce the knife to any groundwork, the
Yeah.
skill, the heart rate would go up. They would fumble
Yep.
through all the things that we've been working on, but we get the reps in, and okay, now it becomes
Right.
just like, I don't want to say we normalize it, but we remove the initial terror of
Right.
that that adjustment to what they were used to.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important for knife work. Actually, I suppose the term that I use, right, is recommitting. So at some points, this is just a training knife. It's not real. So it's a plastic or rubber knife, and let's get rid of that fear.
Yeah.
And let's work on these specific skill sets. And
Yeah.
then I asked them to recommit that training knife is a real knife.
Okay.
Right? And again, it's part of this like emotional control, because if we're always going to treat the training knife as a real knife, then we can't really go on that crawl, walk, run um, progression. It's
Yeah.
always got to be run, and that's not really the best way to learn. So yeah, I call it recommitting to the blade.
Yeah. What's nice is you can stick to kind of fundamental concepts, right, throughout all these things, because I am not at all an expert in, edged weapon
Yeah,
fighting or self-defense or anything, right?
yeah,
I've got my
neither am
training
I.
that I've done, but I understand concepts. And so I can explore concepts with my students. And that, that's not just edged weapon, that's any self-defense, right?
Yeah,
Candidly, I've I've never been in a fight. I don't pick fights with people, and no one's picked a fight with me, so I haven't been in a
yeah,
fight. But I've
same.
been training in fighting for 20 years,
Yeah,
and in, self-defense for some amount of time as
right.
well. Um, so
I love that. I applaud you for that, bro. You're undefeated in street fights. That's amazing.
I am, yeah. You know what's
Honestly,
you want to hear something funny?
yeah,
So only once did I ever get shit for not fighting. Because I don't like mostly no one's ever even given me a reason to want to hit them. Um,
right.
and I'm a pretty relaxed person, so I don't really stress out about dumb things. But okay, let's go back to probably 1999. I was at a house party. My friend's family had a beach house down here in Newport Beach, and nobody lived there, so it was like the party house. We'd have, a small group of friends that sometimes would accidentally turn into a massive party. but I was the babysitter. I was the sober one. I was the one that was just kind of there trying to make sure that all these people that showed up didn't like destroy this house and that it got cleaned up when we're done. And this drunk kid, a friend of a friend, I was trying to clean up and there was a banana peel on the floor or something. And so I threw it in this beer box, and apparently he still had some beers in there. And so he took the banana peel out and he threw it at me and hit me in the chest. And, I was like that is not cool, but whatever. I'm going to walk away because I got a house to clean. But of all things, Noy was there. So, Noy and I, our relationship goes back to high school, and, he's fresh out of like, hanging out with his gangbanger friends out in the Inland Empire here. And, he's kind of a mad kid, and, he's tough, and he was so mad at me for not beating the shit out of that kid. And he gave me a hard time for a really long time. I can't believe you didn't hit that guy. I can't believe you didn't hit that guy. So that was the closest I ever got. I really didn't want to hit him. And honestly, at that point, I had no confidence in my own ability if he decided to hit me back that I would actually be able to do anything about that. So, on the one hand, I didn't want to fight because I didn't know how to fight. On the other hand, I just wasn't interested in fighting.
Yeah, man. I think, in our industry, I think people really wear it as a badge of honor. And some people really show off about how many street fights they've been in. And I'm like, to me, it doesn't tell me how awesome you are at fighting, because I don't know anything about your opponents. Were you just fighting drunk teens trying to get into the club, or
Right.
like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to like really show appreciation for somebody who's like, who can say, "Hey, look, I've never been in a street fight. I've never felt the need, or I never felt that feeling of fighting for my life." And to me, that just shows good decision making. I'd rather learn from that guy.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you for saying that, because there was a time where I had a bit of imposter syndrome as someone that's teaching, techniques that I've never had to use in practical application. Right. I hope that I never will. And actually, my first private client that ever came to me through GC Krav Maga, she was one of our students, and she approached me for private lessons. And I'm like, okay, tell me about why you want private training. And she's like, well, my ex-husband is getting out of jail soon, and I'm afraid he's going to kill me.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Well, what do I have to offer this woman that is literally afraid for her life? I'm like, well, I have concepts. Okay, and I'm confident in my understanding of these concepts. I maybe haven't applied them. I haven't had someone about to get out of jail and come try to find me and hurt me, but I have confidence in the concepts, and the concepts go, as we've been talking about, concepts go in any different direction, so that you can apply them to different techniques, and maybe the techniques, maybe they work, maybe they don't, but I have faith in the concepts. And so that's what I focus on, right?
As you should.
We build the techniques into the concepts.
I say, if prospective astronauts only ever learned from people who have been to space, we'd have never gone to space. Like, even today, for an astronaut to be able to do what they do requires the expertise of people who have never been out there.
Yeah.
Right. There are people in the military and in law enforcement who take marksmanship and shooting courses from people who have not served under those capacities, right? Because these principles, these methodologies, these processes, they are universal, and sometimes it requires somebody detached from specific elements of that to show you a perspective that you may not have considered. So no problem with me, man. I've never
actually I'm going to be recording with Ron Engelman in a couple of weeks, so he's going to come on this podcast as well, because I wanted to talk to him about that a bit as well. So we're going to expand upon the whole me as a civilian, right? The civilian instructor without the practical experience, because he's the complete opposite of that.
I produced a series for a media company who operated in the tactical space, and I proposed this series, basically I went to the NRA show and I went to SHOT Show and I
Mm-hmm.
interviewed a whole bunch of people who have been in actual firefights, right? Who
Okay.
have been in life and death situations.
Yeah.
And my question was, what can you pass along to your students based on your experiences? And almost all of them said, not a damn thing. Those experiences are mine. The specifics of those instances belong to me. And the common theme was that I can't pass along my experience to you. And students so badly want to believe that, oh, my instructor has been stabbed 8 times, so I'm going to take knife defense classes from him,
Yeah.
subconsciously feeling that, that experience is going to by osmosis transfer to them. And so if they ever get into a knife assault, that they're going to survive. It's just not how things work. In fact,
Right.
all of these professionals who have been in life and death situations involving firearms, what they feel like that they can teach somebody is what not to do. It's not what to do
Okay.
right. It's
Yeah.
just like what not to do. And even
Yeah.
then they go, it doesn't guarantee that they're not going to make the same mistakes I made. So in fact, the
Right.
answer is still nothing. Nothing about my experience can be passed on to my students. Those are my
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both of us undefeated in street fights.
Perfect. I love it.
Hooray.
It's good to feel like I'm part of the group once in a while, because I
Yeah,
work with
there you go.
a lot of folks that have the whole combat experience or law enforcement or whatever.
Same here, but they trust you for a reason, right? Like they
Yeah.
trained with you for a reason. They call me for a reason. And again, because we're not trying to be something that we aren't. Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's too hard to bullshit in this industry before somebody just sniffs you out and go, you're not who you claim to be.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah, and I think
leave
about
my
that because I
Cheetos
train
alone.
police officers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I train police officers, right? And it's like, okay, what do I have to offer this person? Well, it turns out quite a bit, because the combat training that they receive in their academy is
it's crap.
pretty abysmal.
Yeah. And that's pretty universal. Even their qualification and requalification standards. I mean, they were bad already, but they're dropping these standards practically everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about violence. So you've obviously studied martial arts. You've studied self-defense and all that. You've been out there with all these military guys, law enforcement guys, and private security and whatnot. Like, what would you say, based on your experience and awareness, is like even the likelihood of being assaulted, right? A lot of people just come in because like it's a fun way to get fit, but some people come in because they're really scared of violence. So,
yeah,
I don't know, what have you seen? What have you learned?
that it's low even in the most dangerous places.
Okay.
It's low. Recency bias is a real thing, right? Like if I personally experience violence, or if somebody within 1 or 2 degrees of separation from me experiences violence, we tend to have a very warped notion of the likelihood of violence occurring again or to us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying bury your head in the sand and not be prepared, but really the likelihood is quite low. And it's even lower if you consider just not being an idiot, don't be in stupid places and, with stupid people doing stupid things. That goes a really long way towards avoiding violence. That's it. And this is why I often say, like, look, man, there better be something about this whole self-defense thing that you enjoy and that you're passionate about and that you love. There's got to be layers of purpose here other than just preparedness.
Yeah.
Right. But again, not to say to bury your head in the sand, but man, some people are taking like escape and evasion counter tactics, like how to escape from being hung upside down blindfolded. You know what I mean? Like how to
Yeah, that's pretty
survive,
specific.
right? It's like, man, that's awesome. That's great experientially. Like I would like to have that training experience.
Sounds
Um,
fun. Yeah.
sounds awesome, right? But if you're taking it because that's a legitimate fear, like what are you doing with your life that you're afraid as a grown man to be kidnapped, hung upside down, interrogated while blindfolded? Like
Yeah.
maybe make better life choices, bro. You know,
Yeah.
move to
Okay.
move somewhere else.
Yeah.
Um,
Lay off the BDSM.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, violence, the likelihood of it. Look, I heard this saying and I love it. And it goes like this. It goes, it's not about the odds, it's about the stakes.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So the
That's,
odds of having to defend myself against a knife is extremely low, but the
yeah.
stakes are really high.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So I gotta
that
kind
kind
of
of, so you've said two things here that kind of resonate with me right now. So one is the recency, and then the other is what you just said about the odds versus the stakes. So, kind of my own background on getting into Krav. So I used to do Muay Thai and boxing, and this is coming out of, not, I did Kempo when I was a kid, but otherwise I really didn't do anything. I was very non-athletic. And then I started doing Muay Thai and boxing, and I felt great. And I was like, man, if I got in a fight, I would kick that person's ass. Like I was feeling confident. Um, this is up in the Bay Area. I was training in Oakland, and there was an instance. Oh, and then I learned about Krav Maga from someone that I just like met somewhere, and I was like, oh, that sounds very practical. That's interesting, but I'm having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing. And then there was an instance where one of the top instructors in San Francisco, Alex Gong, was shot and killed. He was a Muay Thai guy, and
yeah.
so at that point, there was like this recency thing, right? We're like, oh my gosh, like this guy is like one of the best in this area at Muay Thai, and it did nothing. It doesn't do anything against a bullet. Um, maybe there's something to this Krav Maga thing after all. But then go back and look at context, and it's like, okay, well, what happened? Well, he was at his studio, and someone was driving by and like nicked his car. They bumped his car, and they kept driving, and he ran after them and confronted them on the road, and they shot him.
Yep.
And so, one is the context, right? Okay, well, could that have been avoidable? Yes. You don't run after them. You get the license plate and call insurance, call the cops, whatever. But then there's also the like you were just saying, the stakes versus the odds, right? Like, okay, well, he came into that feeling, trained enough maybe to have a confrontation, but maybe it wasn't.
Right.
Maybe the training, it wasn't the right training. And so that's where I still feel good about Krav Maga, because we touch on a little of this and a little of that and a little of this and a little of that. But there's no solve for everything, but
Right.
contextually, okay, at least I'm thinking about that, right? Well, maybe there is a gun, so maybe I just want nothing to do with that anyway.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think you need any martial arts training for that. Just
Yeah, I mean, that's decision making.
it's just decision making, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, like stories like that make me wonder, because this person is trained and because they felt like they could fight, it kind of empowered them and put themselves in a position where they are actually doing anti-self-defense stuff. Like
Yeah.
he got himself in a position where he got killed. And that
Yeah.
probably has something to do with how confident he was in his ability to manhandle another human being to win that kind of fight.
Yeah.
And I worry and I wonder about this all the time. You just never know, man. You never know what's out there. But again, if we're going to talk about data, right? If we're going to talk about likelihood and probability versus possibility, a vast majority of assaults, not even close, are simple assaults not involving weapons of any type.
Right.
So, but for that person, again, it was not about the odds, it was about the stakes.
Yeah.
And so, wrong set of circumstances at the wrong moment, and
Yep.
that's the outcome.
Yeah.
That's really sad, man.
And I think about, as a martial artist, as an instructor, to a degree, we, or if I'm speaking about myself, I am expected to kind of carry myself with a degree of confidence and, maybe badassery, but I'm really not interested. Like, the confidence is fine. Like, if you appear confident,
Sure.
then, you're already making yourself less likely to be chosen as a victim.
Right.
But like, I won't intentionally put myself in a position where I'm challenging people that don't need to be challenged. And I think about an old Krav Maga instructor of mine was talking about how he was riding down in the elevator at his apartment with some people, and I guess they were, like, I don't know, being loud or something, and someone else got in and kind of made some underhanded comments about them, and this Krav Maga instructor was like, there are two kinds of people that you can talk to like that, and I'm not one of them. And I'm like, wow, that's badass. Like he put this guy in his place. But on the other hand, I'm like, I wouldn't do that, because I don't know who this guy is or what he can do, and what's
Yeah,
the point?
man.
Like who cares? Like,
Well,
just get off the elevator when you get down and go about your business. Like, I
here's the thing,
understand the
man.
need to, like, check people on, like, being an asshole. Like, some people just shouldn't be allowed to be an asshole, but also, like, do you need to do that?
I man, there was a couple of embarrassing moments for me, where I just got my ego get the best of me,
Okay.
and particularly in road rage incidents, where
Yeah.
I follow the guy, I block him in, I get out of my car, and then I confront this person. We have a little thing, and then whatever stuff happens, I drive away, and I'm just like, you idiot! Like, how could you have let your ego take control like that? And I just feel like an absolute sack of shit, man. Because
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be better than that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there were instances where I've drawn my knife, and afterwards I just felt like dirty. I'm like, that was uncalled for, man. Like,
Yeah.
you put yourself in a situation where you put everything on the line.
Yeah.
And thank God nothing escalated to the point where it was a life-changing thing. But I'm constantly confronting myself with this. Yeah. I'm a guy at the end of the day, like, sometimes my ego gets um out of hand, and I always feel like dirty afterwards. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's a process. Like, dude, next time that happens, do not do it. Just drive away, let it go. And so it's a constant process for me. But it's typically like, um, road rage or instances of perceived disrespect in public places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not good, man. But still, after 44 years of living, still undefeated in street fights, still
That's something.
unmurdered. I'm
That
still
is
unmurdered. I haven't murdered anybody.
well done.
Hooray.
Well
Thank you,
done.
sir. Thank you. Yeah, but again, it's an important thing because, like, a lot of guys, I think, can relate to me where they
Yeah.
know better. They know better. They teach people how to de-escalate.
Right.
But there's still that little part of them that's like, keep that part of you fucking in check, but get
Yeah.
to know that part of you so that it doesn't just pop out and appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really ashamed of those moments, man. I'm really embarrassed about them.
One thing that I found interesting, as I try to reflect on myself and learn about myself. So I've always been, rather mild mannered and non-confrontational where I don't have to be. I don't mind having, challenging people or having tough conversations if I think there's going to be an actual benefit. But if it's just to, show that I didn't like that, then I'm usually not bothered. But so this is America, right? We love our guns here, and so I'm a concealed carry permit holder, and I do carry from time to time. And as I've begun doing that a few years ago, I look at, okay, well, what is Drew with a firearm out in the world? What's different about Drew with a firearm? And I'm actually I'm even more conservative about,
Yeah,
what I'm
that's
doing
good.
and where I go. Right. It's not like, all right, cool. I'm strapped, right? I can handle anything. It's like, no,
Right.
I've got this and I don't ever want to use it. Like I
Yeah,
have
that's
it,
good,
but I
man.
don't want to use it.
Yeah, that's not everybody thinks like that though, and we see evidence of it a lot, with just simple arguments escalating to somebody dead
Yeah.
because they drew their gun too quickly.
Yep.
So hopefully what you described is the norm, you know?
I hope so. Actually, I haven't really had conversations about that, but I would hope
Yeah. And
so.
especially in the United States, right? Like, with the whole Second Amendment being such a divisive topic, right? As a Canadian, I go, all right, yeah, Second Amendment, that makes sense to me. But
Yeah.
then I hear counterpoints about, well, not everybody should, like just because they can doesn't mean they should. And then you get
Right.
into the weeds and the nuances of it. And it's such a hotly debated topic. I remember I worked in the tactical industry for a long time. If you're not 100% for it, then you're 100% against it. And people just
Right.
want to create this division where it's like,
Yeah.
hold on, sorry, there are actual nuances. Like, you know, can we discuss
Yep.
those things?
Yeah.
And people just kind of pick a side, and it's like, yeah, all
I'm
right,
with you. Most of the gun owners in my life are very much, um, all about, having your gun is your freedom.
yeah,
I'm very middle of the road. I'm, I
yeah,
could say maybe an enthusiast, and I appreciate a gun as a tool, and it's fun to go
yeah.
shooting. But if they took away all our guns, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I won't like it, but it's
It
not
is.
gonna.
It is I believe it is. My friend who's a United States Marine, 25-year law enforcement guy, Sal Mascoli. He kind of characterized it to me in a way that made sense, even to a Filipino Canadian. It's like it's every living creature's right to be able to acquire or develop defenses relative to the threats present in their environment. Roses have thorns, snakes
Yeah,
have venom. And I'm like, you know what? That is a universal right. It's a freedom. Like freedom of mobility makes sense. You should be able to go where you want to go as long as you're not trespassing or encroaching on other people's territory. That
yeah,
doesn't mean you can drive erratically how you want. It doesn't mean you could drive a tank on the highway. So you can have the freedom with conditions. And I think that's where the firearm um, debate ought to happen, right? Like,
yeah,
yes, right wing conservative Second Amendment supporter, you are right. And then anti gun people, you may have some points. So there's got to be some discussion about it. And,
yeah.
you know, yeah. Uh, just having that opinion, I am going to be vilified by both sides,
Yep.
which I'm fine with. I'm a Canadian. Who am I?
Yeah,
My
right.
opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah, you go to the Philippines, and 7-Eleven's got a security guard with a revolver on his waist.
Yeah. And a shotgun with one round in it.
Yeah. That tripped me out the first time I went there, like literally going into like a convenience store, and there's a security
Yeah.
guard and he's so friendly. Oh, welcome, sir. But
Yeah.
he's got this revolver on his belt that looks like it's probably like 80 years old.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll tell you
I'm
what
just like,
though, security guards in the Philippines, super well trained.
yeah, are they
I
really?
don't know about their requalification standards, but a lot of them are like super well trained. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
good. If you're gonna
Yeah.
have security, they might as well be trained.
Right. 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 A lot of them, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of their training is like really like militarized and pretty hardcore.
Okay.
Um,
All
anyway,
right, I got one more question for you here, and that
let's
is
go.
on carrying. So we're talking about everyday carry, right? So knife as
Yep.
everyday carry. So people that
Yeah.
that carry a knife with the idea that it's there for self-defense,
Okay.
like yes, no, yes, but under these conditions, it's a good idea. What do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
um, it always is going to depend where you live, right?
Hmm.
If you can, do. In Canada, we're not allowed to carry anything for a defensive purpose. Um, believe it or
Really?
not. Yeah, but
Really?
yes,
Oh my gosh, for defensive. So that's wild. Okay.
we're allowed to carry knives. There's no length restrictions to the kind of knife we carry. There are specific characteristics of blades that are prohibited. Like you can't
Okay.
have out the front blades, nothing spring loaded, anything that can be opened with the one hand using centrifugal force is
Really? Okay.
illegal. Yeah. But there's no size restriction. The only thing we can't do is we cannot conceal it. Okay. So if I were to carry a pocket knife, such as this,
Yep.
in my pocket, if any part of that blade is exposed, it's not a concealed weapon. Okay.
The blade or like the whole unit?
No, the whole
Just so
unit.
I'm clear.
If
Okay, got
any
it.
part of it is exposed, it's not a concealed weapon, which
Including the
is
clip.
including the clip. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in Italy, it's the opposite. Okay. Which means if any part of the blade is concealed, then it's a concealed weapon.
Okay.
Right. So they're allowed to carry it openly. But if any part
Okay.
of it is concealed,
Yeah.
it's a concealed weapon. In
Okay.
Canada, if any part of it is exposed, it's not a concealed weapon. I don't carry a knife on me. I have one in my car. I can
Yeah.
justify that. But I don't typically, unless it's a special event, I don't carry a knife on me. But if I were to
That's
give
so
advice,
interesting.
yeah, man, traveling the world and hearing knife laws, it's strange.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but it certainly is a force multiplier
It
in the
is.
absence, right? In the absence of where you can't carry firearms, it's the next best thing.
Yeah.
Um, I would say if you were to carry it for defensive purposes, carry a fixed blade instead of a folding blade. Where
Okay.
right, folders have moving parts. Most of them require some kind of fine motor skill to deploy.
Yeah.
Things can fold in on you. So if it's for a defensive purpose, carry a fixed blade. Carry it in the same position and train to deploy it from that position under different stressors.
Yeah.
I don't believe in the whole idea of the knife is meant to be felt, not seen. I don't
Okay.
believe the same thing for a firearm. So a lot of people believe that if I'm going to pull out my gun, I'm going to use my gun.
Yeah.
If I pull out my knife, I'm going to use my knife.
Hmm.
I'm more inclined to say if I pull out my gun, I should be prepared to use it. If I
Okay.
pull out my knife, I should be prepared to use it, but I'm not obligated to.
Yeah.
And we can have a nuanced argument about that. I actually did with Ron because he was like, as soon as my knife is out, I'm using it. We had a very nice discussion about it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. I got the podcast just came out a couple days ago, so I got it in my queue.
Yeah. So, if I were to ask you as a self-defense instructor, like, what's the number one defense against somebody with a knife?
So I guess it depends on the context of the threat, right? So we have
Yeah.
brandishing,
If you
right,
see a threat, if you see somebody with a knife, what would be advice
so
number one?
one is if you've got let's just say the distance or the appearance of time, like they're showing it, they're not going to use it, or they're a little bit far away, then you just GTFO.
Just right, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
just
and
run away.
that's a truth. Run away, right?
Yeah.
Don't engage. Run away. And
Yeah.
so, if we were to extrapolate some truths about that, then we can say that the knife is a deterrent.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
knife can serve as a deterrent. So, working from the opposite side of that, you can produce a blade as a deterrent to the further escalation of violence, while simultaneously being true that if you flip out a knife, that could actually escalate violence. That could make things worse for you. So those things can simultaneously be true. Therefore, one thing isn't absolutely right.
And I think about that with the knife, and I do carry a knife.
Yeah,
Although, I almost think of it as a tool, right? And I use my knife all the time for different things, right?
for
Never
sure.
a person, but it comes in really handy for a lot of different things. But when I think about it from a self-defense perspective, like, just I would be very, very hesitant to deploy that,
Yeah,
particularly
absolutely.
for the reason that it is a force multiplier that conditionally could end up being used against me, and I do not ever want to deal with someone with a knife.
Absolutely.
So if
Absolutely.
I'm the one bringing the knife to the confrontation, then I'm the one that's introducing that as a risk back to me,
Yes.
and
Right.
that's like, being stabbed is scary. Like, that idea is really scary to me.
Yeah, it is.
Like I've, for educational purposes, not entertainment, but educational purposes, I've seen videos of knife attacks, and they're awful. They're really awful, and some
Right.
people end up dead very quickly.
Yes, I see a lot of them, and my friends in Brazil send me videos all the time.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, I know it's dark sometimes, but look, those things can simultaneously be true. Like if we observe again the natural world, right? Producing a knife as a deterrent is um, the rattle from a rattlesnake, right? It's going, hey, I got venom, I'm
Yeah.
here, right?
Okay.
And but at the same time, there are ambush predators who maintain the element of surprise and use their survival tools without any pre-warning.
Yeah.
I just think those things are they can simultaneously be true that the knife is meant to be felt but not seen, but it can also simultaneously be true that the knife can be used to deter the further escalation of violence or to elicit an expedited escalation of violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you got to read that moment in time correctly, man. Right? Like
Yep.
that's the truth lies in the specific conditions of the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Last question.
Okay.
For
Okay.
real.
Okay.
For real. For real.
All right.
So someone, consumer, looking for uh, some martial arts self-defense training. They find a school, they're doing their
Yeah.
2-week trial.
Yeah.
And let's just say they're doing it because they want to learn to take care of themselves, not just for fitness or camaraderie, which are
Okay.
great byproducts.
Mhm.
Top, let's just say 3 things that you would advise someone to observe in their decision-making process, and what they could get out of their first couple weeks in a new school.
Sure. Before I get into that, I just want to say that proximity to where you live and ease of access is probably the number one thing, right? Not
That's
a
why
lot
I
of
barely
people are
train
going,
anymore, because I only want to go to Noise, and it's so far away from me.
right? It's the number one thing. So if you have a judo or an aikido place that's 5 minutes from you, you're more likely to go there and get more from that than a really, really awesome place 2 hours from you that you never go to.
Yeah,
Okay. That's number
fair
one.
enough.
Location matters. This is just
Yeah.
the truth. That's like real life, man. Um, other than that, observe the students, get to know the other students, get to
Ooh,
understand what
yeah.
their level of skill is, um, find out how long they've been there, right? If a bunch of people have been there for a really, really long time, you know, that's a super good sign. Now, I think cleanliness and organization can work one of two ways, right? Like cleanliness and organization of a facility is generally a good sign.
Yeah.
If you're looking to be a fighter, then that doesn't really matter so much. Like
Yeah.
bags can be ripped and there's no
Yeah.
toilet paper left and the
Blood
floors
on
are
the wall.
dirty, right? But generally speaking, if the place is well kept, it's well organized, that's a good sign. It's an indication of its leadership.
Yeah.
Again, that's a nuance. That's a nuanced thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say, just you mean just like looking for signs to make
Yeah,
sure that you're in a
you're in
good
your
place?
2-week
Yeah,
trial, and you're just kind of figuring
sure.
out is if
Yeah,
I want to learn how to protect myself, but also I want to, be able to, sign the contract or whatever and know that I'm going to enjoy coming here while learning this. Like, what
Yeah.
are
So
those
yeah,
two?
like examine the facility, examine the students, like get to know some of the people there. Um, I guess the other thing, and again, this is a nuance thing, right? Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. But instead of looking at the instructor's certifications, maybe look at the kind of trophies and medals that are in that place,
Okay.
and extrapolate from it, right? Like if it's just a bunch of kata competition, maybe not. But if you see a couple of medals in jiu-jitsu competitions or boxing or Muay Thai, those are indicators that they spar here.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can go in your 2-week trial, you may never see people actually pressure test or spar, but it's good to know that
Right.
they actually infuse that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, those are 3 off the top of my head. The willingness of the figurehead or the instructor there to field questions without making you, sound like or feel like a dummy.
That's
How
huge.
open are they?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, man. But again,
Okay.
honestly, a proximity, location.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because you're gonna go.
Yeah. Proximity is huge. I mean, and that's kind of part of the decision-making process before you even walk in the door.
Yeah.
But I would agree. And, so instructor, right? The skill and knowledge without the ego is great. Okay, everyone's got some amount of ego, but are they open-minded with their students? Are they willing to have conversations and discussions? And it's not just like my way and no other way. And then like you talk to the other students. So culture, right? Culture is huge.
Yep.
Culture is
Absolutely.
really is the main factor in, are you going to enjoy yourself? Not are you going to learn, but are you going to enjoy yourself?
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, like you preempted this by saying that, they're not there to make friends, they're there to learn self-defense. Still important.
Yep.
Because it's going to matter. It's going to matter, the people that you're around.
Yeah. You can only show up for so long without having your mat buddies, right? At some point, you want to be able to be a part of whatever's going on there instead of being like on the outside looking in.
Yeah. That's it.
Cool, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, bro.
am immensely appreciative of you having this conversation with me, because I don't these days I don't get to talk to a lot of I know you don't call yourself a subject matter expert, but I'm going to, so I don't get to talk to a lot of subject matter experts that are from outside of the circle that I'm already a part of. And so I've only known you for the past week, so this is a lot of fun to be able to follow up so quickly.
Yeah, man. Awesome. No, I appreciate it very much. Thank you for asking those questions. Yeah, that flew by. That was an hour and a half. Thank you very much. I
How about
super
that?
super appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, Paulo, I will so everyone listening, I've got show notes at thesuperhumanblueprintpodcast.com, so I will link to Paulo. I've got I think it's like your link tree, or you've got your list of links, so I'll put that in there. I'll throw in your social media, your YouTube, and
thank you.
So people know how to find you, how to follow you. You got a lot of followers, especially on your YouTube, because there's a ton of good content in there. So everyone, if you're not already following, go check it out. And I will see you when you come down here to teach Filipino martial arts.
Sounds good. I'm gonna get you to fall in love with stick fighting. I promise you.
Okay. All right. I accept that challenge.
All right, brother. Thank you again, and thanks for everybody listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. See you, Paulo.